So thank you for joining us for this month's TI Talk series. We are excited, very excited to have this talk for you and have Santa Clara County Office of Ed's iSTEAM team here to lead us in the discussion. So my name is Brian Dunnicliffe, and I am an education technology consultant, and I support many of the states you see here listed underneath my name in the West. I've been with TI for about 7 years and have had the pleasure with working with schools and districts and all sorts of educational partners around the West in a collaborative effort to help advance learning and achievement in math, science, and STEM. We're so glad to have you here, and this is a great place where we get to highlight the work that our partners have done around the country. Okay, so hopefully everyone's getting logged on. It might take a couple of minutes as we do, but you'll see, and I mentioned this just a couple of minutes ago, but if you're having any issues with audio or new to WebEx, you'll find the audio setting is just right above sort of where I'm talking, and you'll see our pictures, the video feed. There's an audio and video. You can try and reconnect if you need to. You can always log on or log off if necessary, but that is where you'll find that reconnection feature. Um, if you, for questions and answers and those types of things, if you'd like to add a comment, the best place to do that in WebEx is going to be the chat. And so during this session, you can use the chat feature. It's located at the bottom right of your screen to ask questions or add comments. And when you do chime in, please select, there's a drop-down menu, excuse me, but please select everyone. That way the panelists and attendees can see your questions and comments. And if we can, let's take a second to test this. So if everyone can open up the chat, I'll give you a minute to kind of get there. And then you'll see a drop-down menu where you can send that comment or question to somebody, and it should say everyone, but if it doesn't, please just ensure that it says everyone. And then go ahead and enter a comment into the chat, and let's go ahead and do just right where you're logging in from, the state or the city and state where you're logging in from. We'll enter that into the chat and submit it, and we'll make sure this is working okay. Dallas, Texas. I'll enter here. I'm coming to you from San Clemente, California, down in Southern California. Kansas City, Missouri. Oklahoma. Very nice. A couple of other Californians here. Another Oklahoma. Holdenville, okay. Garland, Texas, great. Okay, so they're coming through. San Ramon, California, welcome. Excellent. Okay, so the chat is working, and the only other thing that I will say here from the agenda is, as you're logging in, we have our introduction here. We're going to go through, and the featured speakers are going to be with us here Central Time from 12:05 to about 1:10. Afterwards, we'll have some time for questions and answers, and then we will have a section on our support for schools and districts and how we might be able to assist with your efforts. And then again, we'll have another chance for questions and answers as we close out. The last thing that I'll say again, for those of you who may have just logged on, we will be recording this presentation and we'll send it out to everyone so that you have the slides, the links will be live, and you won't miss a thing. So we appreciate you being here. And without any further ado, it's our pleasure to welcome Craig Blackburn from Santa Clara County Office of Ed's iSTEAM team. Welcome, Craig, and I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Brian. And just want to mention that on behalf of our superintendent, county superintendent of schools, that we are just so grateful for our wonderful partnership with Texas Instruments and the support that you have and your entire team have provided to us through this journey. And for our attendees, good morning and welcome to Accelerating Engagement through Computer Science and Data Science. We're really happy to have you join us this morning. We're coming to you today from Santa Clara County Office of Education's Professional Learning and Instructional Support Team, and we're located in San Jose, California. And as Brian introduced me, I'm Craig Blackburn. I'm the director of the Integrated STEAM Department. If you're not familiar with the County Office of Education, it's basically like a BOCES or any other regional type of organization. And we're committed to serving, inspiring, promoting student and public school success. And we do that by providing instructional, business, and technology services to the 31 school districts and over 240,000 students in Santa Clara County, kind of the heart of the Silicon Valley. We directly serve students through special education programs, alternative schools, early learning programs, and migrant education, as well as an Opportunity Youth Academy that reaches out to disengaged students or students who have dropped out. Within the County Office of Education lives the Integrated STEAM team, which provides high quality professional learning opportunities and instructional support to improving teaching and learning in the areas of the arts, computer science, environmental literacy, mathematics, science, educational technology, and career technical education. Presenting with me this morning is Dr. Ma Bernadette Sagarino, and she's one of our coordinators in the mathematics department, and Karen Larson, our coordinator for computer science. Just a note on hashtags, if you plan to share through social media during the presentation, we would appreciate it if you'd include our hashtags, hashtag STEAM SCCOE or hashtag SCCOE TI Talks. And in our time together this morning, we plan to share strategies that promote a designer mindset in our students as they work through problem-solving opportunities. But we also hope you uncover how these strategies can work for you in your roles as educational leaders when working with your teams, your parents, and your partners. The approach this morning will be a classroom-based student-centered learning experience designed to create both teacher and student agency. To begin this story, let's pass it over to Karen.
Thank you, Craig, and good morning, everyone. As you saw in our objectives, we have this crazy idea that we can combine design thinking and computational thinking in a project-based learning unit that won't make teachers' heads spin. But we know that teachers have been engaged in design thinking for a number of years, and we can fairly easily embed computational thinking strategies into what they're already doing. To investigate this integration and the similarities and differences between design thinking and computational thinking, let's start with a story. You have 10 boxes that you need to move from point A to point B. These boxes are different for everyone. Think about your role in your organization, the current environment, and those things that challenge you. Take a moment in your mind to define your boxes and where A and B are. How you move your boxes, how you get from your problem to your solution, may depend on the type of approach, design thinking or computational thinking, that you choose to use. If you're a computational thinker, you would deconstruct your box to identify its parts. The questions you investigate might include the size of the boxes, how heavy they are, and if there's anything fragile inside. Are there patterns that you find? And if so, what stands out as most significant? You may then create a set of instructions that you test and refine to find the most efficient route to point B. Design thinkers attempt to understand the intent of the problem before looking at any solution, computational or otherwise. It is in the application of empathy and knowing the end user and experimentation to arrive at an innovative solution. They make decisions based on the stakeholders' input and research-based evidence. In our box activity, an interesting finding could be that they don't need to move the boxes themselves, but maybe what's inside the boxes. Or that the box itself doesn't need to actually go from one place to another. Understanding the user's goals is how we are going to get that box from point A to point B. Design thinking and computational thinking have overlapping characteristics that are approached in different ways. Both are collaborative, require brainstorming and fast thinking, prototyping and testing, and communicating the results to a particular audience. So let's take a little bit deeper look at both of them. The concept of design thinking grew out of architecture, art, and design, and it is now applied in many fields. It's a human-centered approach to problem solving that develops 21st century skills, creativity, and innovation in our students. Design thinking is systematic, that there are these steps that require collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking manifested in the classroom or in the workplace, and applications to the real world. It's also cyclical, meaning once the testing is done, the team should circle back to the ideate area again after receiving feedback from their users, and do it as many times as necessary until their user is satisfied with the end result. Computational thinkers address problem solving using 4 specific principles. They take problems apart, looking for patterns and trends. They focus on what's important, and then create a step-by-step set of instructions to solve the problem. Through computational thinking, we empower students with that confidence they need to tackle big, ambiguous problems. They develop persistence through challenges that require iteration and experimentation, and strong communication skills to facilitate their collaboration. We also develop in them a curiosity in all disciplines, not just math or science, that leads them to asking and answering big questions, all leading to this set of instructions that they would create to get something done. Design thinking can shape computational thinking, meaning that while in the design thinking process, computational thinking practices can be implemented in a way to solve the identified problems. Bernadette's going to take us through a little bit of a reflection exercise on these comparisons.
Thank you so much, Karen. Greetings, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. So I'd like to invite you to look at this statement. Design thinking shapes computational thinking, and it is design thinking that needs to be given the highest priority in our education system. So why do you think that is? I'd like to invite everyone to please type your response in our chat, but do not hit enter yet. Let's do a waterfall chat so that in a moment we can all look at each other's responses and review them at the same time as well. So I'm going to give you a moment or two, dear friends, to type in your response as to why this particular quote or statement is important. Okay, please hit enter and send in your response to these statement. Thank you so much, Mary. Design thinking makes more personal for our students. Design thinking encourages creativity. Thank you. Their interest actually leads into computational thinking and problem solving, right? Thank you so much. Design thinking builds resilience because as they are grappling and trying to make sense of what they're trying to present in approaching a certain problem or an issue, that they too are thinking about how they can use their knowledge and skills to be able to address or respond to the challenges that they're trying to do. So thank you again, and you can drop your response to the question that I just posted with you, thinking or reflecting about the statement that we have on this particular slide. So next slide, Karen. Okay. All right, so as we return to our need to move those boxes that Karen has just mentioned earlier, design thinking use computational thinking practices, and in doing so, this allows our students to design multiple ways of successfully moving those boxes. And most importantly, though, it focuses on the end user and their needs. So before we take a deeper look into design practices, let's build the connection between the strategies and the content for mathematics, computer science, and data science. And so for the purpose of the work that we will have today, we are presenting to you the intersections between, again, math, computer science, and data science. And as you know, attitudes about statistics and mathematics form early. So it's important to ensure that students in the elementary and in middle school grades have positive and meaningful data science experiences. And that can happen when learners engage in a project-based learning environment. Project-based learning is a teaching method in which students gain knowledge and skills by working for an extended period of time to investigate and respond to an authentic, engaging, and complex question, problem, or challenge. An important feature of project-based learning is the opportunity for student voice and choice, the opportunity to choose to learn the way they learn best, and to direct some aspects of their learning helps our students feel personally invested in their learning and gives them a role in shaping and creating it rather than it being simply delivered to them. Building PBL units that integrate our three content areas here, math, computer science, and data science, is so important, so beneficial. As you can see how those key practices are similar, we also want to keep these practices in the back of our minds as we work through the next phase of our presentation. Design Dash. Design Dash is a classroom activity, classroom strategy, a classroom practice that allows our students to explore a design mindset using a real life situation, and that it intersects, again, mathematics, data science, and computer science in a way that it engages the students in a project-based learning opportunity. It is possible that school leaders could also use the same concept in their practice with some issues within their school sites, within their districts. And those boxes that we talked about earlier in your broader school environment. So applying design thinking process in a classroom setting depends partly on the amount of time our teachers can invest in a particular area of study. A design dash, though, is meant to be short, a short activity that still addresses design thinking features and can be deepened and expanded as time and expertise allow. We have linked the facilitator's guide to our slide, and we truly appreciate Molly Wilson for her work in creating the design dash. So design dashes, although short and intensive, are engaging for our students because first, the students learn to externalize those ideas through words, drawings, sketches, and prototypes. Next, they experience how working quickly and making fast decisions in teams and collaborations leads to surprises, to creativity, to fun, and a lot of output. Third, they practice discovering and framing a challenge around human needs. And of course, they caught up in learning about their own ideas rather than defending them. So those experiences is just so meaningful and impactful for our students. Don't be surprised though, if you get outputs that look similar to this. We may not have the sound, Karen.
Let's make your entire face at once. It's for my friend Giselle, who complains she's always running late for work in the morning.
Then let's watch it again. How's that sound?
Thank you, Karen.
I've made this machine to do your entire morning routine from bed. It washes your face, applies moisturizer, rubs it in, and even puts makeup on your entire face at once. It's for my friend Giselle, who complains she's always running late for work in the morning.
So did you notice what he said at the end? That he built it for a friend? We can guess that he uses the design thinking approach to, as he kept his user in mind, his friend Giselle. But we're now going to walk through the design dash that is both influenced by design thinking and integrates our 3 curriculum areas in a way that students will develop critical thinking and collaborative skills and utilizes their voice as a designer and a creator in the process. We'll begin by building our team, and if time allows, start with some community building activities that develop collegiality and focuses on the student's strengths. Limit each team to no more than 4 members, as we want to make sure everyone is actively engaged in the process and that everyone working on the project has a voice and their voice is heard. At this point, the team doesn't know the challenge yet. It hasn't been defined. So it's all about getting to know each other. Also, each team will have to designate a member who will act as the user for the other team, for another team. So for our practice here, Craig has been assigned to another team, but he's volunteered to be the user for our team. So when we do empathy interviews or prototype unveilings, he'll be pulled away from his group and join us to provide us his feedback. So we have been assigned the challenge of planning a road trip. First of all, we're all anxious to get on the road again and travel. For families, the idea of a road trip may be the only option. We felt this challenge would not only incorporate mathematics, but a good deal of data science too. Depending on our users' needs, the team would have to consider distance and time of year, weather conditions, maybe gas mileage, could be even currency exchange, and other issues that would be involved in taking a trip we would use data collection and making sense of the data. At the end, we're going to wrap this up with an engaging computer science activity that involves coding, but continues the focus on empathy and user involvement. So at this point, the teacher should begin by having a lesson design created that identifies the standards and the skills he or she needs each student to master as part of the project. Objectives and expectations should be documented, as well as a timeline and resources available to students. Any good lesson design would look this way. They should also provide data resources that the students will need and how to safely access them, and the process the students can use to request assistance from the teacher. We won't be walking you through the creation of a project-based learning unit today, but know that one should be developed in order to support this design dash. That all being said, it's perfectly acceptable to start small and get your students used to the process, and then develop one that might be a little bit more elaborate once the students understand what's expected of them. Our next step in using this graphic organizer that you see is to have each team member share what they know about the topic, an opportunity to tap into prior knowledge. This is a great way for the team to see where each of their strengths lie and what additional research they may need to do to become more familiar with the topic. The teacher can use this as a means of formative assessment to identify some initial mini lessons. Mini lessons are those short lessons that provide information on one piece of content or a particular skill, like building collaboration skills. Teachers can plan then to embed them into the unit or hold impromptu lessons when needed. The teacher can also pull small groups aside to provide more personalized and individualized instruction. The real fun begins when we get to know our traveler. In this case, it's Craig, who's been identified as a middle school principal. As Craig talks, the team will have a scribe take notes, as identified in this graphic organizer. It's important that Craig does most of the talking. The team members should listen carefully to problems and pain points, the challenges that he identifies. They should ask why when appropriate. And remember, this is not the time for our students to start recommending any solutions. They're only gathering information. Hey, Craig, thank you for taking the time to meet with us. Of course, my phone is right in the middle of this. My apologies. Thank you the time for meeting with us. We understand that you would like to plan a road trip. Tell us more.
Well, first off, thank you for helping me plan this trip. You know, I really want to return to Yosemite and do some backpacking in the backcountry. I've backpacked all of my life, and for me, you know, unplugging and getting really as far off the grid as possible is truly the best trip I can take at the end of a school year.
I can imagine so. So you backpacked in Yosemite before?
Yes, and the last time was about maybe 3 years ago. I went right after school and when school let out in early June. It's really beautiful at that time. Lots of wildflowers and wildlife. Still very quiet. Few tourists. I also love getting there as it is a fairly quick trip from home.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that sounds so exciting, Craig. What was the weather like?
Well, that depends. Most days are warm and sunny. Nights can be cold and wet, though. Definitely need to be prepared for cold weather and for the possibility of rain, sometimes even snow.
Oh my goodness. So what do you bring with you?
Well, of course, a large backpack and, you know, the typical camping gear, tent, lightweight tent, tarps, freeze-dried food, have to carry water, dry clothes, and of course, never leave home without the first aid kit.
Have you forgotten to bring anything else?
Gosh, early on, all the time. Not on my last trip, though. I'm pretty confident now in my backpacking skills.
Have you ever had to use that first aid kit?
Not really. I bring it just to be on the safe side. I haven't had to use it, and it wasn't really helpful the one time I did hurt myself.
Oh, what happened?
I slipped on a wet rock and rolled my ankle pretty bad. Fortunately, I wasn't too far from the visitor center, and when it happened, I was able to hobble back. So it was an unfortunate way to end that trip.
Yeah, sounds like it, absolutely, especially after the planning. Was that on the last one, the one 3 years ago when you hurt yourself?
Yes.
So in this short interview, we gathered enough information to start defining our challenge. We want to think carefully about what Craig mentioned as his pain points, but we also want to identify an underlying challenge or problem. Using this chart can help guide our team in thinking more deeply about the problem. It's important for students to think more broadly about their potential user at this point in the process. We talked to Craig, but others may want to use this design. That's why we give our user a nickname. So it's not just about Craig, but travelers in general. We've nicknamed our traveler the Backpack Master. Bernadette, what do you think the Backpack Master's main challenges are?
You know, Karen, I think it's getting ready to backpack after a long delay, like 3 years. I also think that the weather may have hampered his past trip.
Yeah, you're right. He mentioned bringing a tarp and dry clothes. Makes me think that the weather was top of mind. Do you think that an underlying problem might be the ankle injury at all?
I think so too. Yeah, and that may be attributed to the weather as well. It would be interesting to see what weather conditions are like in Yosemite in maybe early June. I'm sure we can find that data. So in that short modeling of Design Dash, we also would like to talk about data more generally. The California colleges and university systems have recently approved that a course in data science will meet the university, the A through G high school graduation requirements in mathematics and can be taken as an alternative to Algebra 2 or in addition to Algebra 2. It can lead to a pathway in calculus, statistics, data science, or other STEM or humanities subjects. This is exciting in many ways, as this area of study relates to students' lived experiences in handling real-world data. Applications of data science include processes of uncovering the stories hidden within data, therefore engaging our students to make sense of the decisions that they make that impact their role as global citizens. We also would like to share with you the work of Dr. Jo Boller and her team at UCubed at Stanford University. Dr. Boller is part of the team writing the California high school data science scores. She's also a co-author, one of 5 principal authors of the California Mathematics Framework, and it's in the revision process right now that also embed data science as part of the one of the courses that will again provide pathway and engaging courses for our high school students. And Dr. Boller is very, very particularly interested in developing an interest in data science with girls. The UCubed website has links to all sorts of resources for our teachers, for our students, and for our parents as well that would be interesting and engaging for all of our students. And so as our students work on planning their trip, the teacher then would revisit what the students need to know about applying data science. So data gathering, looking for patterns, sense making of the patterns, and how it relates to our backpack master's concerns, and then ultimately communicating those findings to their user is so critical. The data they want to explore might be lengthy, and in this case, maybe want to limit it to, let's say, weather and location and distance data. Our investigations then led to what we think is a clear solution that when planning for that trip for our backpack master, that it is at a better time of the year. So we sketched out what we saw as the problem and then proposed a solution, a possible solution, and we are ready to take this back to Craig to get his input. But before we test our prototype, let's take a look at this chart. It has 4 quadrants and that are typically used in design thinking. So when we present the prototype, we're not going to preface it with any explanation. We are just handing it over to Craig and letting him verbalize what he sees, and we are going to again note his comments. And if he asks questions, we should be answering them with more questions or another question. And at this stage, we just want to hear his comments so we can make thoughtful revision to our prototype. So here you go, Craig. Tell us what you see and what you think.
Well, I see that you believe my concern is bad wet weather.
Mm-hmm.
Has bad weather been an issue on your trips?
Occasionally, there was some rain or dew on the ground, you know, cold at night, but the days were pleasant. It looks like you propose better weather, but not sure how we can control the weather.
How might we get you better weather?
Maybe going later in the summer, but I'm not really a fan of that.
Why is that?
I need to go in early June. Just into the school year, it's a good time to travel with less crowds and much more peaceful environment, way to get the stresses of the past school year released. It's too busy during the summer, and I need to focus on getting the school year started, when August comes around. Plus, it gets pretty hot as the summer goes on.
So upon hearing Craig's feedback on the prototype, the team comes back and iterates the plan to include all those feedback. Our revision then would suggest a change in location that will have a more ideal climate in early June. And the new proposal would include necessary equipment, maps of the routes, available facilities, and information what to expect weather-wise.
Thank you, Bernadette. Having understood our users' needs and creating a workable prototype, let's now consider blending in the computer science integration. We can think of bots and sprites as our user, and our students can code the path of the trip and the emotions of the user into the bot sprite. Whether our classrooms have access to Texas Instruments Rover, Spheros, Tinkercad, or Scratch, students can more actively engage in building their trip, and as important, they can share their outcome and their work with others. Here's a picture of teachers working through this activity using Spheros. The blue tape on the path is, the path, and the teachers are coding the Spheros movements along the path and the Spheros behaviors on the iPad. Increments of distance and degrees of angle are coded into the iPad, and it directs the bot along that path. Once all the coding is complete and all the information has been inputted, they can run the code, and the bot should be able to run the complete path in just minutes. This activity has applications not only in math, but in language arts and history social sciences as well. In these photos, the students are starting in Europe, and they have to guide their Sphero across the Atlantic Ocean maze in order to reach the New World. They race to see which Sphero could get there fastest and most accurately. If the Sphero went outside of the lines, the ship would be damaged, and they'd have to start all over on the journey. Looks pretty fun. Giving them human characteristics helps relate this part of the activity back to our user. Color, speed, interactions, and other emotions can be assigned to the bot's action that is exhibited along the journey. Characteristics such as anticipation, excitement, hunger, exhaustion, hazards they encounter, and the infamous "are we there yet?" can be demonstrated by the bot or sprite. using a graphic organizer allows the students to plan this part of the activity and then provide it back to the teacher as part of the assessment. Here is an example of the chart completed by a student for the character Hap Finn in The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. The chart is sequential, and as you can see, the student has the bot swerve between the cabin, which is one stop on the path, and St. Petersburg, another stop on the path. And it indicates that the character at this part of the story was drunk. You can see at the end, the bot's light goes out, which indicates that the character had died. It's what is clearly seen as fun and collaborative and engaging activity that includes multiple standards, 21st century skills, aspects of design, and aspects of computational thinking, and super engaging for our students. Bernadette.
Thank you, Karen. So at this point, we have seen how we can implement a design dash, integrating computer science with data science, mathematics, and even literature and social studies. So during this discussion, we'd love to hear where you see this fitting into your school or classroom environment in whatever role that you play. We are going to ask you now to go to our Jamboard, and we are going to drop the link in the chat to help us brainstorm ideas. So you can also type in tinyurl.com/jam to access our Jamboard. And at this point, we are going to wait for a bit and so that you can join us as you will be accessing our Jamboard. Thank you. I am seeing some of you joining our Jamboard right now. That's cool. So once there, if you've used Jamboard, as you can see on the left side, we have some icons that give you the opportunity to use the Post-it note to give us some comments, sticky notes. There you go. So click on the sticky note, dear friends, to add your thoughts. And we are going to give you a couple of minutes to type what came to mind about the presentation that we had around Design Dash and how might this fit into your school environment or your sphere of influence if you are working at the district office, if you're working as a school administrator, or if you're working as a consultant or professional development provider, if you're a teacher or instructional coach, that I think this is now our space to share our ideas, how we might apply Design Dash in that sphere of influence that we have. Thank you. As we are populating our Jamboard, I can see how this actually can be applied in multiple content areas, and designing projects tied to mathematics, statistics, even some project fairs for any content area. This is going to be very, very impactful and useful as well. Yes, many opportunities in our 6th to 8th grade math classes. I totally agree about using it through our entire K through 12 system. Can be used in all subjects and classrooms. What is so impactful is that when we are listening to our end users' feedback, our end users' needs and challenges, and truly seeking about some ways to address those challenges and issues, that those voices are heard. And if any decisions are being made, that they are part of that decision making being made for them and with them. So thank you. Yes, Karen, go ahead.
I just did a comment on the last one we popped in, which was the end of year activities across curriculums. We've had that conversation before, how at the end of the year, especially with middle school, is one of those times when you really do need to not only wrap up the learning for the year, but keep your kids engaged. Spring is here, summer's in sight, and having an activity such as this where they're super engaged and can and develop outcomes that are really linked to their own personalities, their own lifestyles, keeps them active and keeps them focused during probably the hardest time of the year. So I really do appreciate that comment and was glad to see that.
Karen and Bernadette, there was a question in the chat that I think is relevant to this particular activity in the Jamboard. Is design thinking something to use all the time, or are there a few key identifiers that could help me decide when to use design thinking?
Yes, that's a great question. And the question is, no, you would not use design thinking all the time. As a classroom instructor, for me, it required me to look over my broader lesson master plan for the year and identify those opportune times when doing a larger project like this with intersections. For me, it was literature and history, social sciences, so I could pull in multiple content areas together. And that would include both the work of the literature and the work of history and the text that we were using, and build a design thinking unit in that regard. I imagine the similar thing would happen with math and science, or math independently. Bernadette, do you have a thought on that?
I have a thought on that too, Karen. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rick, and also Marcy, for your questions. I'm also looking at your question about regarding professional learning. But going back to you, Rick, I would say I often use some parts of design thinking as a way to truly embed in the work that I do. My focus is on teaching mathematics for social justice. My work in mathematics is hugely on equity lens and culturally and linguistically relevant mathematics and teaching and learning in mathematics. And that part, when we have our empathy interview, that part when we listen to the feedback from our end users, I always do that, whether I'm giving a professional learning with teachers or when some teachers are trying to decide on a curriculum materials for students, or when we're designing or creating or building or planning family engagement. That component of design thinking is so close to my heart. And so some key components are hugely used for me in the work that I do, especially when we highlight or amplify our voice, or the voice or voices and choices of those folks who will be impacted on the decisions that we make for them. So, yes.
Thank you, Bernadette. That also brought to mind one other additional piece of this, and that's the use of vocabulary and using the terms. Although we might not be using the design dash concepts or the design thinking concepts as a package throughout the school year, using terminology that's associated with both design thinking and computational thinking should be done. Using terms such as iterate, using terms, I mean, we always talk to kids about breaking down problems, but using the word decomposition and using the words like, let's build an algorithm when we say, you know, when we're talking about building instructions. So starting to at least use the vocabulary on a regular basis, we would want to do. Even if we're not actually engaging in design thinking or computational thinking projects. It just builds up that muscle memory about what that is about that can be carried on from year to year.
So may I share, Marcy, about my experience using design thinking in providing professional development with teachers? I used these with a team of teachers when we were looking at mathematics curriculum adoption. So I took some parts of design thinking in a way that, again, voicing choice, right? And also thinking about our end users' needs and challenges. And so building the team, and those teams being represented by a wide range of educators within that community. I'm talking about a community of high school teachers, and way back then we were thinking, what would be a curriculum material that speaks to the needs of our students? And so building that team of teachers representative of the different content areas, courses, and gender as well, and experience and expertise, with some considerations that we took into applying design thinking as a way, as a process, as a method to use in the curriculum materials adoption. The huge component of that is those empathy interviews that we conducted. We asked students, we asked administrators, we asked other teachers, we asked parents of what they think curriculum materials should be for our high school teachers, so that engagement and competence and development of math contents is part of that curriculum material. So that was just an amazing to even think of. This is design thinking, but we are also using this method and process when we do curriculum adoption, when we do unit planning, when we do some decisions that will impact the community. So the second frame also, and again, drop your questions, because we, as members of the Santa Clara County Office of Education, we have been supporting a lot of teachers in different grade levels in mathematics, computer science, data science as well. And so we love your questions, and we can share the experiences that we have in using design thinking as a method, as a process, when supporting districts, sites, teachers, parents, and their families as well. So the second frame is also, I think we touched base on this one when we showed you evidence about the intersections of mathematics, computational thinking, and data science. And we would love, again, to hear from you if there were opportunities that you've had experience seeing some of those, sharing some evidence about those practices that you've seen from mathematics, computational thinking, and data science, using design thinking as a method to showcase those intersections. And Marcy, again, I would love to share with you the process and the steps and some of the graphic organizers that I've used in textbook adoption using design thinking. Yeah, thank you so much. I know textbook adoption right now is something that is critical in California as we are waiting for the approval of the mathematics framework, hopefully come November 2021, that's going to be a huge conversation and discussion again to happen. True. Both use problem-solving strategies that need to be revisited. And as we know, oftentimes kids always ask, where is this connected in my life? Well, we continuously, problem solve. And so as we think about how that could be, again, integrated in problem solving and those strategies in problem solving, that would be a beautiful, beautiful message to highlight. Thank you so much, Nandini. And so we can also go to the next slide or next frame, Karen, as they are, again, trying to share those ideas as to how we see intersections of mathematics, computational thinking, and data science. Because the next two slides speaks to revisiting our objectives. So when we started this presentation, we shared our objectives. And now as we are wrapping up our presentation, let's revisit them again with an eye on the content that we shared. These are rhetorical questions, and we want you to think about them in light of your reality. Whether you're teaching face-to-face, whether you're still in distance learning or in hybrid, please feel free to share your responses in the chat if you wish. So for objective 1, how can this support accelerating student engagement in your schools? For our objective number 2, do you see these opportunities to integrate the designer mindset into our classroom learning? And of course, objective number 3, in your role as administrators or coaches or consultant maybe, how can this designer approach change or improve how you approach problems that you encounter in your role? So again, drop it in the chat, share some ideas. Because the next 2 frames of our Jamboard present the intersections between mathematics and computer science, and mathematics and data science through the content standards and practice standards. So the first one is the intersections of, there you go, math and computer science. So we just outlined here some of those intersections from these grade bands, from TK5 to 6-8 from our middle school and high school as well. And even in our advanced data science classes for grades 11 through 12, when they are now looking at data science as a course for high school, those are practices as well as some content standards that we see fit when we look at the intersections of math and computer science. And of course, we also have intersections of data science as well as mathematics for TK through 12. And again, we are so happy that in the revision of the mathematics framework on 2021, we are highlighting data science from TK all the way to 12. So here are some of those intersections so that as teachers, we are not feeling this is another thing to add on, right? It's integrated, it's embedded, it's how we are trying to plan for those engaging lessons that will have our students view these corpus, these constructs as meaningful, interrelated or interdependent constructs. And as the students view these as vibrant, interconnected, beautiful, relevant, creative sets of ideas, that will definitely invite them to have meaningful experiences in the different content areas. So as educators increase access for students to engage with and thrive in these areas and value the different ways of questions and problems can be approached and learned, many more of our students view themselves as belonging to the community of learners, whether that community is in mathematics, data science, or computer science.
We hope that this discussion was, and the ideas that we shared, will help spark ideas for building lessons that provide, greater student engagement, especially in the areas of mathematics, computer science, and data science, but, in other curricular areas as well. And I think the beauty of project-based learning is that it can be applied whether your students are on site or in a distance learning environment. We wish you all the best as you enter the final stretch of the 2020-2021 school year. And next slide, please. And invite you to reach out with questions or opportunities to collaborate. And you'll notice that I did drop in the chat there a while back a link to our digital badge and micro-credential course catalog. And whether you are in California or anywhere else throughout the country, all of our courses are aligned to standards and international standards as appropriate. And they are also designed not only for the content, but with the adult learner in mind. So check those out. And again, thank you so much for your attendance and your participation. Brian, back to you.
Okay. All right, so I think I am back on here, and Bernadette, Karen, Craig, thank you so much. It's very inspiring, and now, Craig, also I'm inspired to backpack Yosemite, so thanks for that. It might be one additional problem though, and just keeping me alive, so that could complicate the lesson a little bit, but we really appreciate you and all of you and the work that you did here. There's a lot of value and what we learned, and so we really appreciate that. And I just wanted to say on a personal note, I have the pleasure of working with so many partners across the region, but I've yet to meet a team as dedicated to bettering the teaching and learning for their, for the districts and schools and everyone you support. So thank you all for what you did here, and it's a pleasure to work with you. And also, just on that note, that goes for everybody on the call. I know you're taking your own time to learn about this topic, so we really appreciate the extra effort in joining us. But now we were hoping, to have a little bit of time as you have a couple of minutes to digest what you learned for Q&A. You did a great job of putting it in the chat, but there may be some additional questions. And maybe while you're thinking of those, I have one that came to mind that I can maybe get things started for us. But there was a lot of great examples of how to use technology to help with these concepts. But what if, a district or site doesn't have the technology, or maybe the teacher is not tech savvy? Can you talk to us a little bit about strategies or thoughts on that?
Thank you, Brian. Yes, I have a couple of thoughts. I'll jump in with a couple ideas. We know of a number of teachers who have been wanting to do work like this, but did not have the technology in their classrooms to do the work. And they took advantage of organizations such as Donors Choice to raise some funds and use their own Facebook platforms to ask friends to help pay for getting some technology into their classroom. So that's just one idea. But another thought too is this doesn't necessarily have to be technology based, where classrooms have been for years using more of that maker mentality, excuse me, cardboard, duct tape, cardboard boxes to build their prototypes, art paper. Excuse me. So that's an idea too. Don't use technology.
Post-it notes go a long way in these activities.
They sure do.
Awesome. Awesome. Great. Well, thank you. Let's see if we give it a couple minutes, see if there's anything else to enter us into the chat. Great, Mary. Thank you. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
Yeah, I truly appreciate, Mary, about your comment here, being able to engage all students and at different levels, and Design Dash truly allows our students to bring their own ideas, right? Bring their own themselves into the design component of Design Dash, but also when they're thinking also about addressing the challenge of the interviewee maybe, or whatever the problem or issue that is being the team is trying to address, that again, just being mindful about the needs and issues of the person that they're trying to create some ideas to address those challenges as well. So thank you. Yep.
And Rick, thank you for your question about how this works with ESL learners. We have a vast majority of our school districts have classrooms with large majority of you. And maybe Bernadette, you have the statistic on the top of your head, but we do have a lot of ESL learners in our classrooms. And what's I think very helpful with these activities that they're very visual. There's not a lot of text involved. It's not text heavy. And it tends to, and because the teams are small, there's opportunities to really engage ESL learners in the visual aspect of this, and in how that promotes their learning. Also the opportunity of the teacher being able to work with small groups. In a project-based learning setting, you can pull those students aside, pull groups or teams aside to give any more personalized instruction that might be necessary. Bernadette, what are your thoughts on that?
Rick, you have great questions. I'm a visual learner, and every time I look at some of your comments here, I just love how you're thinking of our English learners as well. I actually have a visual here while you're responding to Rick's question, Karen. Rick, at Santa Clara County, we have about 50% of our students are English learners. Well, that's only for our Latinx. So we also have other English learners from different with different languages. So that's more than maybe 60 to 70% of our students in Santa Clara are English learners. And so as I'm using my lens in mathematics, oftentimes we use the same process of that Design Dash, or even the design thinking, and how we approach let's say a mathematics problem. And I use these reminders for me as I'm teaching mathematics problems for my English learners to first situate themselves. So as a teacher and as a learner, where do I see them in the problem? Where do I see myself as a teacher in the problem? And just leveraging the language that they have, and the language that they have, and the languages that my class has, into trying to approach that problem. The second step that I do is immerse. So now you've seen there, explore some of the things that you know about the problem. If it's the English language that we're trying to make sense of before we even get to the math problem, then we have to address some of those English language that we have to be able to support our students to make sense of the math, and then reflect and then act on it. So I try to, again, use a different language also, Karen, and translate that into the math into different contexts. So in this case, as a teacher, how can I use design thinking to solve a specific math problem, supporting my English learners? As a professional development provider, when I support my teachers, how do I use design thinking so that we can plan, create, sustain, and build capacity, as well as initiatives as well, addressing the needs of the users, whether those are for students, for our teachers, or for our administrators. And many times I use, simplified language, as you could say, to then contextualize it so that I still am using the same process, but also in a different context in the work that I do.
Oh, that's beautiful, Bernadette. So beautifully stated. Thank you so much. There was a question about using this to introduce an entirely new program. I would say absolutely, you can introduce an entirely new program using the design dash model or design thinking model. I would preface it though with, you might have to do a lot more mini lessons along the way. So having those ready and in your hand to continue to elaborate or build on content would be a great way for students to do discovery on content and learn it themselves. But again, providing them with the proper resources that they can safely access to get that information. So yes, definitely. There was another response by Mary who appreciated being introduced to the Jamboard. Jamboard is awesome. It's a great collaborative tool that we use all the time in our practice. And I hope you can use it with your students, with your other colleagues or teachers or your, in your classroom. And Rick, Bernadette's right on.
Let me add on to Wendy's question about new program. I know one of our school districts used the design process to recreate their classroom spaces to be more student-centric. And they also used the design process, of course, in building out 21st century learning labs. So they had the opportunity to do some new construction and, along with the architects, the community, and important feedback from the students and teachers, they used this process to really design some innovative spaces that had multi-use, but were able to provide opportunities for that hands-on learning, especially with engineering. So the design process could be used in a number of different ways.
Excellent, thank you. Any other questions? We'll give it another minute here, but appreciate the responses and the questions and comments. And yes, the Jamboard, it worked great. I was watching it, and it's something that we're going to look into as well. So thanks for sharing that with us as well. We'll see any other questions come in here. And we'll have another opportunity towards the end, so we appreciate them. And if you do have a question, it doesn't have to stop here. So thank you again for the presentation and the openness to answer these questions as they come along. And thank you for everyone here in asking those questions. So I will go ahead and move to the next slide. So I guess for those of you who joined on after maybe the introductions and those types of things before the presentation started, my name's Brian Dunnicliffe, and again, I'm the Education Technology Consultant for the West, or the states that are listed there, including California, and that's my connection to the Santa Clara County Office of Education here. But we have other representatives throughout the United States and Canada, and we are happy to work with you for sort of any of the efforts that maybe you're looking to enhance in math, science, or STEM. We talked about data science and computer science here, but we work in a lot of avenues, and I'll talk just a little bit about that and how we support schools and districts and other educational organizations. So 1 second here, move to the next slide. So we saw some images of technology, TI technology, even in the presentation here that the Santa Clara team did. But I wanted to talk a little bit about, what are we doing in this space? How are we here to help? And really, it's kind of how I think about it. And a lot of the conversations that I have is, with TI technology, one of the advantages is, especially now, that the teachers, educators are pressed for bandwidth. There's really not a lot of time. If you're still in remote learning or hybrid learning, it's this juggling act of I've got my school, I've got students and my work, but I've also got, whatever's going on at home and everything else. And so to learn a completely new platform or tool can be challenging. So one of the things that we're doing at TI is to expand what can be done with the technology. So what we do with any partnership is first we come together and we work to understand the goals of the school or district or organization. So, are those Algebra 1 goals? Do we need to get the kids algebra ready? Or is it a STEM focus? Or maybe a college and career readiness focus? With the Santa Clara team, one of the things that we looked at is leveraging TI technology and training to help teachers teach and students learn data science and computer science through the core classroom environment. So it could be through the math strand, and Bernadette did a great job of showing those different grade bands and sort of what the goals are of that. From a TI standpoint, we look at, okay, what technology might be appropriate for those grade bands? What is it that we're trying to do with project-based learning and computational thinking? And then how can we develop lessons that are deliverable and easy to understand, not just for the students, but for the teachers? And then we can incorporate that as a piece of the puzzle for Santa Clara's efforts. But other examples, they might not be as big of a scope, but there may just be an initiative to get more students involved in the STEM pathway. So for example, what we would do there is we have a simple series of lessons called 10 Minutes of Code, where you could take the graphing calculator, maybe you have a TI-84 or TI-Nspire, and you can have teachers do a 10-minute lesson so that every student in class can have a successful experience of writing a program. And the benefit there is we're able to reach so many more students than relying on maybe a STEM club, which we love, or a robotics competition. But the issue there sometimes can be we see the same students, same demographics going into these programs. And what we want to do is grow those electives. We want to grow that pathway so that every student has a chance to succeed and some exposure and a positive experience with STEM. And a 10-minute lesson may not seem like a lot, but if you can fit that in over the course of the year in a math classroom, maybe that kid in the back of the room who wasn't interested successfully wrote a program and might then look next year to get involved in one of the programs that you have at your school or district. So that's one way we can help. And then the other is what this slide there says. It's from imagination to the real world. So with the rover, which is this robotic vehicle here, what we can do is have the students learn math in a way that actually happens in the physical world. So maybe they're learning the coordinate plane and they're starting to understand, the coordinates, and they want to go to X, Y. Well, why not have a little bit of coding, light programming, and have a robotic vehicle do that on the floor or the desk in small groups, and have these students break up the day with some real world activities, or potentially, navigate. We have a activity where they would navigate a city. And so instead of maybe teaching them right away exactly what those concepts are, they're going to learn by having to understand that when a self-driving vehicle rotates, when it needs to make a turn, there's an exterior angle involved in there, and you can kind of bring it back. So we're trying to imagine new ways of getting kids excited about math, and that's really what the tools are for. But once we understand your specific goals, then we would come together to determine how to accomplish them. And so with that, one of the main issues is what technology do you have? And then what do you need? And then the question is, well, what about funding, right? So that's always the issue. And so with the Santa Clara team, we were looking at some specific grants, and that can be a long process, but it can be, if you keep working on it, there's success at the end of the tunnel there. And so we're working on that, but sometimes it's, end of year budgets. Right now I'm working with COVID relief funds, recent propositions that have provided funding, or other federal, state, and local opportunities that might be there. And what I'll do at the end is, or actually when you get the email with the slides and everything, I'll include a couple of links that'll provide some more information about how we help with the different funding needs. So with that, I'll just move to the next slide. There we go. And look at the learning tools. So, with the grant, we might be a small piece of the puzzle, but the technology will be a piece there. And what we look for there is just to determine the best technology for the goal. And so if we're looking at science, does it include some data collection tools? What are we wanting to do to analyze that data? If it's STEM, you can see here that we have the innovator, a microcontroller, maybe working on some electrical engineering lessons, or some robotic vehicles for the math or science classroom. We really look at what are the needs, what are some of the instructional strategies that we want to assist with, and then what is the curriculum? Is there an alignment that's appropriate? How do we integrate this technology and sustain it for long-term growth from day one and then moving forward? But with the technology, it's great to have it. But as we've seen with all kinds of technology, yes, it's great to have it, but then if there's no training, it's really hard to see that success translate into student achievement. And so a big part of what we do also is building teacher leaders, so through professional learning and individualized coaching. And so it's the same. It works the same there, where what we want to do is work with you to develop a plan and determine what kind of support is needed. Are there professional learning, professional development days involved? Is there individualized coaching in the classroom? Are you in person? Are you remote? Is it a hybrid? And so we work to build a plan. As we bring on new technology, how can we support that? Is it free online resources? Is it some specific things that we should do with the individualized school that's receiving the technology? And once we know that, then we can kind of dial in a little bit and understand the specific needs, and then we can create a plan for support with the learning. Next, in the sort of slide that showed me there are many others here who are there to support. So I wanted to let you know, if you are not connected to your education technology consultant, we have a place on our website. Here's a slide, but again, we'll send you information where you can get in touch with somebody who just will be there to bounce ideas off with you, to collaborate with you for your TI needs. So everyone here on the team I've been working with for a while, and it's they're great people to work with. And I can say, we really are a consultant role. So our goal is just to understand what you're trying to do, and maybe we can do it quickly, or maybe there's a plan that needs to be put in place. But the folks that you see on this slide will work together with you to meet your needs wherever you're at. So for today, again, thank you for joining us. And maybe you were able to attend other TI talks in the past. We have another one coming up on May 6th, same time. It'll be Engineering from Day One. And this we'll have speakers from the Ira A. Fulton Schools of Engineering at Arizona State University. They'll be able to share an initiative focused on creating paths to engineering for underrepresented populations, first-generation students, minorities, women, and those with socioeconomic needs. So put that on your calendar if you're interested. And also, one other thing to know is that we still have an ongoing Tuesday webinar series. So this is a great professional learning opportunity. These are recorded and archived as well, but a huge range of topics from STEM to specific subject areas, technology focus. There's just a ton there, and it's available for free on our website, and also many of them are located on YouTube as well. So I'll share those links at the end. And so those are a few of the things that we are looking forward to, some things that we are doing to support. But I'd like to just finish out here and see if there are any more questions. I'll take a look again at the chat. Feel free to chime in. But if there are any other questions, we're happy to answer them from TI standpoint, or I know that the folks from the iSTEAM team at Santa Clara are still on the line. So fire away with any additional questions. And if you think of any of those while you're thinking, maybe, just wanted to let you know again, if you need a certificate of attendance, just let us know, and we'll be happy to provide one. You can email You can reply to the emails you've received. You'll have my email information as well. You can reply to me once you receive the email from me. And then at the end, you'll also be prompted for a survey at the end of this. And so if you don't mind completing it, it will help us to improve future TI talks and other series that we may be involved with. So please let us know how we did, anything we can do to improve. Great value to us. Again, we'll send the slides out, all of the information, and you can reach out to us anytime with any needs that we can help with. So I guess without any further ado, appreciate everyone on the event today. Thank you again to the Santa Clara County Office of Education iSTEAM team. Really appreciate it. And also to Wendy and Ruth behind the scenes. Thank you for running the show here and making this a successful TI Talk series. And thank you to all the participants. Really appreciate you coming on. And we look forward to talking with you when we get the opportunity. So take care, everyone, and have a great spring break. If maybe you're looking forward to that, appreciate everybody's time.